Hello, in this video I'm going to go through all the cards that I would include if I was going to build a Blech Loafing Pest commander deck focused on playing out our pest, bat, insect, snake, and spider, which I'm going to call our gross army, and then buffing them by gaining life. Blex, Belsh's dad, gives other pests and bats, insects, and snakes, and spiders +1/+1 whenever it dies you gain for life. The backside of the card says that you can look at the top 5, draw that many cards, or put them into your graveyard. There's some cool flavor text on our commander that mentions the fact that our commander is Blex's son. The next card that I want to talk about is Terra Botanist. For 1 and a green, it's a 2/3. It's an insect that has landfall. Whenever a land enters, we gain a life. It's an on theme for our gross army, and we're going to be playing a land almost every turn. So it's on theme. It's going to wear the counters. It's going to give other counters. It's going to be great. Essence Warden is an elf shaman. It is not a part of a pest or a bat or an insect, a snake, or a spider. It's not a part of our gross army. But whenever anyone has a creature enter the battlefield, we gain a life. Not just your board, it's anyone has a creature enter. That's like 3 or 4 more +1/+1 counters on our team every turn cycle around. Teacher's Pest is 1 black and 1 green for a 1/1 with menace. Whenever it attacks, you gain a life, and then you can pay a black and a green to return this card to the graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Couple comments here. 1, this thing attacks, triggers to put a +1/+1 counter on your team. It has menace, so it's going to be hard to block, and then when they do set up its double block, you're going to be able to kill both. It's harder for them to just chump block this, as it gets 4 +1/+1 counters on this or 5. You can return it from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped at instant speed, so you can do it at the end of the person before yours turn, and then it comes into your turn, and now it's no longer summoning sick. Pretty good. 10, the Pests is 1 black and 1 green for instant. As additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature. Most of the time, we're going to be wanting to sacrifice a token spider or a token pest we have, and we'll get into generators for those. But this says create X 1/1s, where X is a sacrifice creature's power. So you can sacrifice a pest that has a bunch of +1/+1 counters on it, or a spider token that has a bunch of +1/+1 counters on it. You create 4 new pests, and every single time you chump block with those or sacrifice them to one of your effects, you're going to instances of gain life. The deck is really, really good at stacking payoff triggers. And we haven't gotten to them yet, but it's going to be fantastic. When we have just 1 pest trigger with multiple triggers in play, it's going to be great. Arcanogenesis is 2 and a green for an instant. Create X 1/2 green spider creature token just reach, where X is the number of creatures attacking you. Prevent all combat damage results this turn by non-spider creatures. You can just, create 4 or 5 spiders off of this with no headache, and then put a couple counters on them, and now they can't attack with their flyers. They can't attack with anything. And because we have so many instances of life gain, like from Prosperous Innkeeper, whenever another creature enters, we gain a life. Those little tokens are going to be more than just chump blockers. They're going to be able to deal significant damage to our opponent's things. The Endless Web is 2 green for a 3/5 with reach. Whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/2 green spider creature token. This is not restricted to only once per turn. So if you're playing against a Niv Mizzet deck or a VV Onatir deck that's just going ham, playing all these counters or draw effects or buff effects, you're playing against a Feather deck, you're going to make a significant amount of spiders off of this, and it's on theme. It's part of our gross army. It's great. Arcane Signet, it's good to ramp. Ashnod's Altar, we are a little bit of a sacrifice deck. I know we haven't gotten to those cards yet, but you can sacrifice your pests to trigger a life gain, to add the mana to cast your bigger spells. Assassin's Trophy just destroys a permanent opponent controls and they get replaced with a land. Bastion of Remembrance is 2 and a black for an enchantment. When it enters, create a 1/1 human soldier. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. You want to have a diversification of these kinds of threats. I'm going to talk about Blood Artist really soon, but having enchantments that do this and creatures that do this and, playing Seraph, the one that gives you the emblem on the backside, having a diversification of these makes it harder for your opponents to destroy these kind of effects. 1 board wipe and all your creatures, including your payoffs, are gone. Bastion of Remembrance is enchantment. It doesn't die to the same kind of removal. Eladros Witherbloom is 5 black green. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a 1/1 pest. Sorry, at the beginning of each upkeep. Even better. I was going to emphasize that, and then I read it wrong. But at the beginning of each upkeep, you make a 1/1. That could be a chump blocker. It can be on theme. You can sacrifice it, trigger your life gain payoffs. It's fantastic. And we're a life gain deck. So being able to pay paying 10 life to untap all lands we control, not even a headache. It's going to be great. Blight Mound, 2 and a black for an enchantment. Attacking pests you control get +1/+0. And have menace. And whenever a non-token creature you control dies, create a pest. Fantastic. Blood Artist. Whenever this creature or another creature dies, target player loses a life and you gain a life. Stacking all of these payoff triggers, right? You sacrifice a pest to an effect. Blood Artist gains you a life and deals a damage to something. You put a counter on everything. Your pest, when it dies, also gains you a life. You put another counter on something. Stacking these payoffs is going to be, it's going to create different conversations because you're not just destroying things. You're creating really interesting lines where you could watch your board and you can be like, okay, so when a non-token creature dies, I make a pest. I can sacrifice a non-token to get a pest. Maybe you've entered the battlefield from Essence Ward and plus was counting everything. Sacrifice in response. All of these sacrifice things can be done at instant speed. And just fantastic. Whenever this or another creature you control enters, you gain a life. And this is I thought frog was a part of this. It's a spirit frog, pest, bat, insect, snake, and spider. Okay, so this is not a part of our gross army, but it is another payoff for having things enter the battlefield to gain us life. Fantastic. Cauldron of Essence, 1 black, green. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. This is what I'm talking about. Diversification. This is an artifact. Bastion's an enchantment. Blood Artist is a creature. Different types mean different kinds of removal to have to deal with them. 1 and a black and a green, tap, sack a creature, return a creature card from graveyard to the battlefield. Turn one of your pests into one of your better cards. It's great. And you're going to get triggers off of that pest dying. Containment Breach, destroy target artifact or enchantment. If its mana value is 2 or less, you make a pest. So if you blow up a talisman, a soul ring, a signet, you get a pest off of it, which is on theme removal, which is green. Cultivate, 2 basic lands, 1 to play tapped, 1 into your hand. Dina, Soul Steeper, whenever you gain life, each opponent loses life. These are the things that you're going to scale these pieces together to the point where combat becomes almost optional to finish off some of your opponents. Then you just swing in with these giant creatures you made big plus and plus ones too, right? You Blood Artist effect, you sacrifice a pest, pest gains you a life, put a plus plus count on everything. Blood Artist gains you a life. 2 instances of life gain, each opponent loses another 2 life. Just fantastic. And it is a sacrifice outlet itself. Doubling Season, maybe a little pricey, but for 4 and a green, it's an enchantment. If an effect were to create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many tokens instead. If an effect would put 1 or more counters on a permanent you control, it puts twice that many instead. I see people playing Doubling Season in their token decks. So I see people playing Doubling Season in the puzzle counter decks. I only play Doubling Season in my token decks if I don't already have access to white. But this gives both modes, and so this is definitely something you want to look at. It's a 5 mana do nothing. But it's 5 mana. If you're already progressing in your game, it's going to double everything else you do. Dusk Shell Crawler is an insect. It's a part of our gross army and says each creature you control with a plus and plus encounter on has trample, and it can stick a plus and plus encounter on target creature. Fantastic. On theme, part of our gross army, and rewards us for having these plus and plus encounters, and makes our chump blockers that we grew into non-chump blockers not being able to be blocked by your opponent's chump blockers. Eccentric Pest Finder is 2, a black and a green for a 5/5 with trample. At the beginning of each end step checks on everyone's turn. If you gain life this turn, this creature becomes prepared. For a black and a green, it has a sorcery. For each opponent, you create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with when this token dies, you gain a life. Now, it's not an instant, so you can only do this on your turn, but it still checks to see if it can prepare itself on everyone's turn. Enduring Tenacity is a snake glimmer. It's a snake. It's a part of our gross army. For 2 black, it's a 4/3. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. Fantastic. And if it dies, it comes back as an enchantment that sticks around. Farseek can go get a plains, an island, a swamp, or a mountain. We're going to want to go get a non-basic swamp with this. It's going to come into play tapped anyway. So just play 1 or 2 swamp forest lands. Even if you're not playing shock lands or dual lands. I don't even play dual lands. But if you're not playing shock lands, just go find 1 or 2 bulk tap lands, like from Dalmanar United or the Snow tap lands, just so you can get some amount of value off of this. Feral Appetite is 2 and a green. Attacking pests you control get +1/+0 and have death touch, making our chump blockers harder to be chump blocked because they don't want to just, not be chump blocks. You can't, if you attack with a couple 2/1 pests, they can't block with their 4/4s and take their damage because they don't want to lose all their 4/4s. For 1 and a green, it exiles chuck a card from the graveyard. If a creature card is exiled this way, create a pest. So it's graveyard against, it's like graveyard removal against the graveyard opponent. You can do this at instant speed in response to them trying to reanimate. Lots of value. Gorma the Gullet is 1, a black and a green for a 1/1 with lifelink. Whenever another creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Non-token creatures you control enter the battlefield with additional +1/+1 counter on them for each creature that died under your control this turn. So you do this after you chain off all of your +1/+1s, and it remembers and can buff anything that happens on a future turn. Hardened Scales. We're putting +1/+1 counters on things, so why not put that many +1? Insane for only 1 green mana. I was actually just playing with my Gave deck earlier today, or Gave deck. I don't know how to say it. Let me know in the comments. Is it Gave or is it Gav? Or Gave? You're kind of arguing about it. I just built it. But for 1 green, I put this in play on turn 1 and I had it for the rest of the game. And it generated a lot of value. A Wire Mite is an insect. It's an artifact. When this creature dies, you gain 2 life. It's on theme. It's of your type. And it dies and gains you life. And for 1 green, you can sacrifice to exile target non-creature artifact or non-creature enchantment. Heroic Intervention. For just 2 mana, permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible. If you're building up this massive army with tons of +1/+1 encounters, you are going to fall under Damnation, Wrath of God, Blasphemous Act. Your creatures are going to get board wiped. Giving them hexproof and indestructible is going to protect you for longer. Immoral Bargain is 1, a black and a green. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice X creatures, destroy X target non-land permanents. Enchantments, planeswalkers, creatures. Sacrifice and pass, trigger your life gain. Fantastic. Inspiring Call is 2 and a green. Draw a card for each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. It's going to be the majority of your creatures, and then they gain indestructible. Fantastic. The Horn Beetle is 4 and a green for a 3/4. At the beginning of your end step, create a 1/1 insect. Then put for each +1/+1 counter that you put on creatures under your control this turn. So if you have 4 creatures and you gain 2 instances of life, you put 8 +1/+1 counters on thing. This thing creates 8 1/1s that are going to wear those counters in the future. Khazad-dû Nectar Pot is 1 and a green for a 1/3. When a land enters under your control, you gain 1 life. It's another insect that gains you life when things enter. It's great. Lewin Exchange Student is 2, a green and a black. It enters prepared. You exile a creature card from your graveyard. It becomes prepared. And for a black or a green, you can cast a sorcery. It enters prepared, and once it's re-repaired, you create a pest. Not bad. Just generate incremental value over the course of the game. Mirkwood Bats. Whenever you create or sacrifice a token, each opponent loses a life. These triggers are going to stack. We're only looking at them one at a time, but you're going to have 3 or 4 of these in play. Moldervine Reclamation is 3, a black and a green. Whenever a creature you control dies, you gain a life and draw a card. That counts non-token things. Mortality Spear, it costs 2 less if you gained a life this turn, which is not going to be hard to accomplish. Destroys target non-land permanent. Nature's Lore for 1 and a green, searches for a forest card and puts it onto the battlefield untapped. Fantastic. Orin Frostfang for 3, a green and a green. It's a 2/6 snake, part of our gross army. Attacking creatures you control have Death Touch, makes our little pest harder to block or without killing big things. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So now, if you're looking at your opponent and they have a 4/4, you attack with your 1/1 pest. Do they really want to trade with the 4/4? Probably not. You're going to get to chip in for damage and you're going to draw a card. Pest Infestation is XX green. Destroy X target artifacts and or enchantments. Create twice that many pests. Fantastic. So essentially create X pests, destroy half X artifacts and enchantments. Pest Mascot is 1, a green and a black. It's a 2/3 with trample. It's a pest. Then whenever you gain life, you put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Pest Rescuer is like a Alphinomancer, but for pests. At the beginning of each upkeep, if you don't have a pest, create a pest. And if you gain a life, you gain that much life +1. It's great. Those pests don't have Death Touch like the snakes do on Alphinomancer, but Pest Rescuer is good. Pest Summoning. I probably could have played Alphinomancer in this second. I didn't think about it. So definitely put Alphinomancer in. It's a human that creates snakes. Pest Summoning gives you 2 pests. Pestilent Cauldron is 2 and a black. It discard a card to create a pest. 1 tap, each opponent mills cards equal to the amount of life you gain this turn. 4 tap, exile 4 target cards from a single graveyard, draw a card. Restorative Burst is 3 black. Return up to 2 target creature, land, and or planeswalker cards you give to your hand. Each player gains 4 life, exile it. Honestly, I would take this out, the Cauldron out. I just wanted to have more ways to make pests. Take the Cauldron out, put the Alphinomancer in. You'll definitely be better that way. Professor Delian Fell is 2, a black and a green for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. +2, you gain 3 life. 0, draw a card, you lose a life. -3, destroy target creature. -6, you get an emblem with whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. This is great to play in the same deck as Doubling Season, because this is going to enter with twice as many counters, because it just says, Doubling Season says, let's go back. Let's go back. If an effect to put one or more counters on a permanent you control, it puts twice that many instead. So, this Planeswalker would enter with twice as many loyalty on it from the get-go. You can play 4 and immediately have an emblem that no one can take away. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. Diversification. Diversification of these triggers will be your saving grace and will end games quickly. Rapid growth, you got a ramp. Riptross Roaster is 4 and a green for a 3/3 with Devour 1. As this creature enters, you may sacrifice any number of creatures and enters with a +++ encounter. That many +++ encounters on it. At the beginning of your end step, create a number of pests equal to the ++ encounters on this creature. So, sacrifice all your pests, gets all your triggers with ++ encounters on the creatures that you didn't sacrifice, and then every turn it just poops out all of these things. And if you have any kind of things that are like, oh, when the creature enters, they deal damage, this card's going to be insane. Steve is a snake, so he can wear ++ encounters, and you can sacrifice it for a land. Scrooge Swarm is an insect that makes insects, which is great. Sedgemoor Witch, and we have plenty of ways to ramp. We're playing green. We're going to make plenty of insects. Sedgemoor Witch, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, poops out pests. Skull Clamp can sacrifice your pests or your insect tokens to draw 2 cards, because they're just 1/1s before you put ++ encounters on them. You can also put Skull Clamp onto them before you send them in to die. If you know they're going to get blocked anyway, you can just make a block with a creature that's like a 2/2 and then draw 2 cards. Solrin, Southwind Avatar, 3 and a black for a 3/4. It's a snake, part of our gross army. Whenever another creature you control dies, you gain life equal to its toughness. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. Springleaf Parade is X green. Whenever an enchantment enters, create X 1/1 shapeshifters. Those are pests or bats, or insects or snakes or spiders. And all your creature tokens can add mana, which is fantastic. Starscape Cleric is 1 and a black for a 2/1. It's a bat, part of your gross army. It has flying, it can't block, but whenever you gain life, each opponent loses a life. Some of these only say target opponent. This is each opponent. Fantastic. Talisman of Resilience, ramp. 3 visits. Ramp. Twitching Doll is a spider, part of our gross army. It adds mana. You can sacrifice it to just create a bunch of 2/2s equals the number of for each counter on it. So this puts nest counters on it, and your commander, Loafing Pest, can put ++ counters on it. Any other kind of counters are being thrown around. Pretty good. Valentine, Dean of the Vein, is 1 black for a Menace Lifelink 1/1. If a non-token creature an opponent controls who dies, exiled instead. Then you may pay 2 if you do make a pest. So excess mana just becomes pest. On the backside, it's the Dean of the Root. It's a human druid 4/4. Whenever you gain life, you may pay 1. If you do, put a ++ counter on each creature you control, and those creatures gain trample until end of turn. I think the majority of the time in the later game, we're going to play less seats. In the beginning, we're going to play the Dean of the Vein. But in the end game, you could just pay 1 whenever you gain life from sacrificing your things to give all your 5/5s and 6/6s trample. That's going to end and close the game. Village Rites, sacrifice 1 of your pests to draw 2 cards. If your commander's being hit by targeted removal, just Village Rites it, draw 2. Pretty good. The Emissary is an Elf Assassin, but whenever another creature you control enters, you gain a life. It's not a pest, it's not a bat, it's not an insect, it's not a part of our gross army, but it's a 1/1 Death Toucher, so in the late game it can block a bigger creature, but it just gains you life and puts your ++ encounters on things. Winding Constrictor is a part of your gross army. It's a snake for 2 mana, it's a 2/3. If one or more counters you put on an artifact or creature you control, that many +1. And then if you would get counters, you get that many +1 too. It's for energy, but here it's for ++ encounters, and it's going to do great here because it's on part of your army. Witherbloom Charm is a green and a black. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, choose 1, sack a permanent, draw 2. Whenever you choose to gain 5 life, or you can choose to destroy target non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. I think most of the time you're going to want to sacrifice permanent, draw 2 cards, but destroying something that's like stopping you from attacking, getting the 5 life isn't super relevant. High Market can sacrifice your pest to gain life. Sacrificing a pest, you get 2 gain 1 life triggers, putting 2 ++ encounters on everything. Jungle Hollow is a tapling that can enter and gain you life, triggering your things. So those are all the cards that I would include. If I was going to build, I don't want to go over all the lands, so I'm just not going to worry about that. I just want to go over the lands that were notable. Those are all the cards that I would include if I was going to build a Belch Loafing Pest commander deck. I really like it. I think that it's cool that Mirkwood Bats is a bat, so it's part of your gross army as well. Those are all the cards that I would include. I think this deck could also benefit from a Grave Pact, now that I've gone through the whole thing. Just kind of looking over what I might take out. I definitely take out the Cauldron for the Ophenomancer. I don't know. You're gonna have to play with the deck to see what we want to take out, but those are all the cards that I would play, definitely. Oh, actually, this is Spirit. I thought that said Spider Frog. This is a Spirit Frog. Yeah, but it does count your non-tokens entering and gaining new life. I don't know. But Grave Pact would be insane. Grave Pact is 1 black, black, black for an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent sacrifices a creature. And when you're playing with all these tokens, it just gets crazy. So those are all the cards that I would include. If you're going to build this commander, please let me know your thoughts on this deck list in the comments. In the description, there's a link to a Mox field where you can get a starting point for your deck. Consider liking the video if you enjoyed it. But I hope you have a good rest of your day, and may your top decks be ever in your favor. Thank you.